Hello, everyone, especially those of you with this very flattering view over here. It's nice to see a crowded theater full of wonderful Old Globe patrons. Thanks very much for being here. My name is Barry Edelstein. I am Erna Fincy-Viterbi, Artistic Director of the Old Globe, and I'm very, very thrilled to welcome you all here for another in our Carl and Vicki Zeiger Insight seminars. Are Carl and Vicki here somewhere? Okay, well, in absentia, we thank them for their extraordinary support. Vicki Zeiger is a longtime board member of the Old Globe and a former board chair, and she and her husband Carl are among our most important supporters. And their kind support of this program helps us fulfill our mission of making theater matter to more people. And what we do is put on shows here in the Old Globe's campus in Balboa Park. We do an enormous amount of material out around San Diego with now a network of nearly 50 community-based nonprofits that help us make theater that lives beyond the stage. And one way that the theater lives beyond the stage is by living in your minds as you understand more about the work that we do to put on the plays at the Old Globe. And so we have series like this one where we can explain a little bit about the artists that are here and what they do. And the two gentlemen to my right are extremely distinguished artists of the American theater. I'm very, very honored to have both of you with us. And I'm going to introduce you to them. On the far right is Sideeq Heard, a multi-hyphenate director. I'm only a hyphenate director, but Sideeq is a multi-hyphenate director, actor, and rapper. He was the associate director to Saheem Ali for the Broadway production of Fat Ham, was also the associate director to the Globe's good friend Carl Cofield on the Classical Theater of Harlem's award-winning adaptation of Twelfth Night. He was awarded Best Director for the short film Here's a Man at the 2023 Oscar-qualifying film festival Real Sisters of the Diaspora. Sideeq was the inaugural associate artistic director of JAG Productions, for which he created, directed, and co-wrote Men Like Us, a new digital series that follows the lives of three queer black men on their journey to self-actualization, which premieres this summer. His music, including the single Fatal Attraction, can be found on all streaming platforms. Sideeq Heard. And to my near right is the Pulitzer Prize winning and Tony Award nominated playwright, director, and educator, James Ijames. Yay. James's plays have been produced by theaters across the country, including the Wilma Theater, the National Black Theater, the Public Theater, Steppenwolf Theater, and the Geffen Theater in Los Angeles. He's the recipient of the F. Otto Haas Award for Emerging Artist, 2 Barrymore Awards for Outstanding Supporting Actor in a Play, 2 Barrymore Awards for Outstanding Direction of a Play, a Pew Fellowship for Playwriting, the Terrence McNally New Play Award, Kesselring Honorable Mention Prize, the Whiting Award, a 2019 Kesselring Prize for his play Kill Move Paradise, a 2020 and 2022 Steinberg Prize, and the list of extraordinary distinctions culminates with the 2022 Pulitzer Prize in Drama for Fat Ham, which was also a 2023 Tony nominee for Best Play. James is, yay! James is a founding member of Orbiter 3, Philadelphia's first playwright producing collective, and currently he is associate professor of theater at Villanova University. James Ijames. Well, welcome to San Diego, James, and Sideeq, welcome after a long day of rehearsal. Incredibly grateful for both of you guys to be here. James, let me start with you. Fat Ham is a riff on Hamlet that sets Hamlet in the backyard of a barbecue of a family in the American South, and centers a Hamlet who is black and queer, sort of coming to terms with a legacy of family trauma and his own place in the world. Will you just talk a little bit about your relationship to Shakespeare and the use of Shakespeare to tell this story that you wanted to tell?
Yeah, I, like most kids my age, I read Romeo and Juliet, I think, in high school, middle school, maybe. Wait, can you not hear me? Oh, okay, sorry, I thought I heard someone say they couldn't hear me. And I think I read Julius Caesar in high school or something, but I always really loved the language. And I also grew up in the black church, so I grew up reading the King James Bible, which sounds and feels very similar. So it never felt odd to me. It never felt strange to me until I got into academic settings where I was sort of taught these ways of doing it and was sort of in some ways made to feel like where I came from, my identity, the way I spoke didn't match well with that text. And for a long time as an actor, I wouldn't take auditions for Shakespeare. I was very self-conscious about it, but I loved it. I did Hamlet in college as like a student-directed production, and that's kind of why that play has always stayed with me. Because I identified with Hamlet. Like, there's a lot. I mean, aside from the like, your father killed his brother.
Yeah, I hope that part you
that's-
don't identify with.
I didn't experience that, but I knew what it was like to sort of feel a little outside, to feel a little odd, and so that made a lot of sense to me. And so there was this urge in me to want to like do something with Shakespeare that would bring it closer to my own experience, but also so that it could sort of allow people like me to have access to it when they've been told that they don't have access to it. And like every juicy that I've talked to has been like, I really appreciate you doing this. This is one of the times in my career that I've gotten to speak Shakespeare.
Juicy is the name of your Hamlet.
Juicy is the name of my Hamlet.
Yeah. And so these actors have said to you, thank you for making this something for me.
Yeah, making it for me and but also making it rigorous and sort of complex and not just a riff, but actually like,
Let me come back to the comment you made about the King James Bible. I've been in the Shakespeare game for 30-something years, in particular with one leg in training. And I have found that actors who have a background in any exposure to the church, where the King James Bible was the Bible in the vernacular, are like amazing Shakespeare actors because the King James was the king when Shakespeare was writing, and some would argue some make the case that Shakespeare somehow was involved in the drafting of the King James Bible. Not sure that's true, but the language of the language of the King James Bible is the English language that was spoken and written when Shakespeare was composing. Yeah, so there is that closeness to it. Do you think that? Is there a specific black church aspect to it, or is it more broadly a church, just sort of King James Bible Christian connection?
I don't know. I haven't spent a whole lot of time in not black churches, so I don't really know what they do.
Neither have I.
I don't know what they're doing over there. Sometimes I'm like, what are y'all doing over there? I do find, bring it back. I feel like my grandmother would say, well, if it ain't the King James, it ain't the Bible. Yeah. There's a sense of the occasion of the text, I think, is what black people sort of respond to. It feels important. It sounds important. It's like you're saying something that has some great weight to it. And on some level it does, because the way that people used to use language is just very different from the way we use language. It's just more of a delightful experience. Mm-hmm. If you, people always ask me about word choice, and I think diction is what separates, who you are as a writer from other writers. Like, I like words that sound good. So like when Rev says, he could say, you're bringing down the mood. He says, you're bringing down the optimism, because that's a funnier word. Mm-hmm. And I think that is the thing that I got from growing up having to recite and read and think the King James Bible as a child, multiple days out of the week.
So two Two big ideas in Hamlet. Now, so I should disclaim, James and I have talked about Hamlet before. I made a podcast shortly after the pandemic, made an episode about the proliferation of Hamlet in the world at that time. There was a Hamlet opera, there was a Hamlet movie, there was the radio Hamlet that the Globe did, there was Fat Ham. So we've talked about this before. Two big ideas in Hamlet that I want to ask you about that I see very, very powerfully in Fat Ham. One is Hamlet says, the time is out of joint. Oh, cursed spite that ever I was born to set it right. There's this idea that Hamlet has a job to do to set the world, to correct the world, to set the world on a different path, right? The second is that there's a very famous critical line about Hamlet, which is that Hamlet is the tragedy of being the wrong man for the job, right? So that somebody, his father comes and says to him, you need to avenge my death. He couldn't pick a worse guy, right? Could not pick a worse guy. Anybody would have done a better job than this guy, right? So will you just talk about, because I see very powerfully now, I saw Fat Ham on the video that you guys made during the pandemic, saw Fat Ham on Broadway, I've seen Fat Ham here, and I see very strongly this sense of a guy who's been given a job to do and he's just not suited for it, and yet he knows that he has to do this job to bring order to the world. Will you just talk about that piece of Hamlet, if that resonates for you?
Yeah, he in Hamlet he's given this task of like revenge, and in my play he is too. But I think the thing that I think is more critical that he's unable to do is perform a particular kind of masculinity, a particular modality of masculinity, which is one that says the more efficiently violent you are, the more manly you are. The more efficiently dogmatic or draconian you are, the more of a man you are. And I think that is the thing that he's unable to do. Now, what's couched inside of that is like, yeah, you should just be able to go kill him because he killed your dad. That's the thing that men do.
Right.
Right? The Greeks would argue that everybody, does vengeance. Like, Medea does vengeance. Everybody does. Like, everybody is capable of it. But for some reason, by the time it gets to Shakespeare, it's sort of like this thing that is, in my mind, connected to a masculine task. And that just felt like a rich opportunity to talk about what it sometimes feels like to be a black queer man who's not the most sort of manly. Like, if a fight breaks out, I'm probably gonna be like, oh, sorry, excuse me, I won't be in it. I'll be like, like that. I know that about myself, and I grew up that person in a world of people who could fight.
Great.
That's shocking.
And in the play, a word that circulates a lot around that is this word soft, right? Tell me about that word in this play.
I love the word soft. I like being a soft person. I think it's important. I think we should value it more.
And there's a character, the Laertes character in Hamlet is here in a Marine uniform, right? Who wants to be soft. I mean, it's an extraordinary thing to see this man, tall, big guy, in a Marine Corps uniform, secretly confessing that what he yearns to be is soft. And soft means 100 different things.
Most men would rather be softer than they are. They just don't admit it. I mean, most men would prefer to not, like if something pops off, everybody goes, what you gonna do? It's like I think there are probably some men who would be like, I don't want to be the person that's defend this.
Right.
So
it's fantastic, so fascinating to watch that word ping around the piece. Sideeq, let me turn to you. You've done such a beautiful job with this production here at the Globe, and I'm really grateful to you for it. Your relationship to this is kind of complicated, right? You were the associate director on Saheem Ali's production of the play at the Public and on Broadway. And now that the production was at the Geffen in LA, it's here at the Old Globe, you are now supervising it and putting it into place. And I recognize in the production that's in our theater Saheem's production. I very much see that it's Saheem's production. But also in some ways it's not Saheem's production, it's very much your production, right? And I wonder if you just talk a little bit about that job. I'm not sure many in our audience understand the specific role of the associate director, especially in this kind of unusual context that we're in here. Can you help us understand it a bit?
Yeah. Well,
Well, what did you understand your job to be? Not to do a carbon copy of Saheem's production, but to find your place in it.
There's a word floating in my mind right now, perspective, right? Directing is all about perspective. How one person sees the world, if they do the exact same show, is going to naturally be different because another person sees it in a different way. And the beauty about perspective is that I also had the privilege with this show to cast a new cast into roles that they've never played before. And so while we hold on to the shape and the design of the show itself, the way I get to help the actors arch out their performances is different because of my lived experience and also my experience with the play. It's about perspective for me.
Yeah. The company that you've put together here is unbelievably strong and very, very, very funny, like raucously funny. Now, Hamlet is many things, and it has laughs in it, there's no doubt. Hamlet has some laughs in it, right? But it's funny. It is a funny play. There's funny stuff in it. But, the stage is strewn with corpses at the end. And this one is not, I'm not going to spoil, for those of you who haven't seen it, I don't want to spoil how this one ends, but it does not end with a stage full of corpses. Will you talk a little bit about, Sideeq, that tone, what the specific tone of the show is, how to find it, how to maintain that truth, and also be as unbelievably funny as it is?
Yeah, I mean, one thing that helps us a lot is that the stakes are still Shakespearean. So I'm constantly reminding the actors that James writes such casual language and it's fun and it's relatable and it's here, it's now. But then under these Shakespearean circumstances of like, well, your father wants you to kill this person and your mama just got married, and the stakes are so extraordinary that we still have to hold on to those. And also, I remember this funny story. I asked James about comedy and his perspective on it one time. We were sitting somewhere. And you were like, comedy is simple. It just goes ba-dum-da-dum-dum. And as long as you put a joke on the dumb, it works. And I was like, and since I've been like, yeah, he has a point there. And so when I'm in rehearsal and when we're etching out the tone of the show, I'm like, wait, no, it has to go. Just today, I was like, it has to go bum, 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 text. And they were like, really? And I was like, yeah. And then we did it, and it went bump, bump, bum, text. And I was like, no. It has to go bump, bump, bum, text. Because that's what will make us laugh. And naturally, we have some hints of giggly right now because it's just rhythm. And so musicality is actually a big part of this show. This show, in my mind, almost sits in the world of a musical because everything is timing. And the moment that we get off the rhythm in the show, we have to get back on it. And as long as we stay on it, boy, everyone's gonna chuckle.
Yeah. Now, James, in the green room, you were saying you've seen a whole lot of productions of the show around the country. How do you feel when you show up at a theater and you know what rhythm was in your mind when you were writing it? You know what rhythm Saheem and the original cast found, and now you travel to, I don't know, name a city where you saw another one.
Boston.
Boston. You go to Boston, you had nothing to do with the show. The theater company licensed the play. They found a director. They put the thing together. You get on a plane. You show up in Boston, and there's something else going on. Yep. What's that like?
I really like it.
Do you?
I do. It's a part of what it is to be a playwright. That you're gonna go and see it and go, huh. Work. All right. Yeah. Or sometimes you go and you're like, oh my God, that is the most incredible thing. I never would have imagined it that way. So I come in with curiosity.
That's great. Many of the great playwrights that I've had the good fortune to be around feel exactly that way. Let me see what the next group of people is going to find. But do you also feel, it'll be funnier if you hit the word soft?
No, because humor is cultural and changes depending on where you are. Uh-huh. So I don't know. It depends on what that part of the country kind of thinks is funny. It actually does change. When I saw it in Boston, there were jokes that were different from what we did in New York. And I was like, oh, this must be like, this is hitting something in this community that's different than what it, was doing in Philly or in New York or.
Yeah. And has it been produced widely in the South?
I wouldn't say widely, but it's in North Carolina right now, or about to be. It was in Atlanta. It's been in Arkansas. Yeah, it's had Southern productions, but it's, not a ton of regional theaters.
Yeah, no, that's
in
true.
The South.
In the South, there aren't yeah, I know, and that's its own sort of particular story about the American theater. It's funny to think about Boston, Yankee actors doing this play. It is such a Southern play. It's a play very much about specifically the culture of the South. Among the many things that the play addresses, is that notion that the culture of the American South, the Black culture of the American South, is extremely specific. And I wasn't born in the South, didn't grow up in the South. To me, it's wonderful to see that. And I'm sort of interested in, as the play moves around the country, how you find that spirit of the South infusing it.
They always find it. Like, they're always able to get at that thing that I'm trying to scratch at in the play. I don't know. I think the specificity of it makes it meet more people. Like, the fact that it's people don't feel like, oh, I'm trying to reflect myself onto it. They're just like, oh, I kind of recognize that person. Like, I kind of have somebody in my family like that. It's not about, they're not putting themselves in the role of the lead character.
Yeah.
They're trying to connect. It sort of, I don't know, widens the empathy circle or something.
That is a brilliant and wonderful observation, because that's our art form, right? I mean, I often say that the novel and the theater are two artistic forms that are unusually well suited at communicating the subjective experiences of others, right? And I can tell you that Saturday night, when I saw the first preview here, it was a room of 600 people seeing themselves in this show, right? As happens in all great art, it's deeply specific. I mean, rigorously, ruthlessly specific to this world that you've written, and yet somehow we look up on the stage and we say, "That's me. That's my mom. That's my brother. That's my best friend." It's a miracle that theater can do that, isn't it? Can you talk? I'd like to ask both of you to talk about that. The tremendous ability of the theater to be an engine of empathy and to distill the subjective experiences of others in ways that those of us whose life experience could not be more different can somehow identify with. Will you both talk about that?
Yeah, I think when we started the play, we talked about the theme of family a lot. Because family is just never going out of style. We all are going to have them. And I think because of human nature, in fact, when you put a play on a stage that is about a mother, a brother, a sister, a cousin, or an uncle, regardless of race, identity, culture, we all go, oh, I got one. What they doing? Because mine doing the same thing, right? I think, family is very evident, and I think it continues to draw empathy and pull people in.
Yeah, I agree. I think the family aspect of this in particular, I think, is a thing that people just automatically go, yep, I know who that is. Or I recognize that dynamic. It might not be the characters. It might be like how someone speaks to someone. You feel like, oh God, I remember when someone spoke to me that way. It's about the dynamic.
Yeah, and that's absolutely clear that that's taking place, and I'm not surprised to hear that the play builds those kind of bridges all over the country. Can I shift gears for a second, James? I want to ask you about the Pulitzer Prize. What happens? Do you get a phone call?
You find out when the world finds out.
Really?
Yes.
So it's not like the MacArthur genius, they call you up.
Nope. You get no warning.
Really? So
That
it's
is correct.
coming, right? They're going to announce
You know that
tomorrow.
you have said yes, you can submit the play. And maybe the day that they're going to announce it. I think I knew and purposely forgot.
Right.
And
So-
I was just in my office on campus, and my phone started vibrating.
Really? And people like, you just won the Pulitzer Prize.
Yes.
And then they call you and they say there's going to be a ceremony?
Yes. Well, they send you an email. It's an email.
Did it have like one of those red exclamation marks, you know?
I don't think it did.
Important.
I think mine might have gone to spam.
Yeah.
I think I had to go find it because someone was like, "Did you get this?" And I was like, "Oh wait, let me go see." I think I had to go check.
I remember when I interviewed you on that podcast, it was brand new. And I asked you to identify yourself on the podcast, and you left that part out. And I said, you also were the winner of the 2020. And you said, I haven't gotten used to saying that yet. Have you yet? A couple of years later?
I'm more used to it. But like, here's the thing. Like, I think things like that can freeze you in amber.
Really?
I do. And I got it and immediately was like, okay, I got to write something better than that.
Oh.
Like, it just sort of made me hungrier and
Did like Paula Vogel, Tony Kushner drop you a line? You know?
Yeah, many. Oh, that's also the cool part is like the people who've won are like, hey, friend. Welcome to the coven. It's not a
Secret handshake and the whole deal?
No, it's lovely. It's like, you know, people will text you or tweet you or email you or send you something on Instagram.
That's amazing. Well, congratulations, because it's an extraordinary distinction. Amazing. Sideeq, will you talk a little bit about the show? So you were with the show at the Public, right? Is that where you started?
Yeah.
Yeah. Public, Broadway, Geffen, here. Will you talk a little bit about how it has changed, grown? That's a 3-year period, am I right?
Yeah, it is. We've been doing this for a minute.
Yeah.
Yeah, when we started, honestly, it was kind of such beautiful alchemy. I have to say, we use the phrase "if it ain't broke, don't fix it" quite a lot. Even going from the Public to Broadway, the biggest thing that changed is we were in a thrust. So we were in a 3/4 thrust when we were at the Public, and we had audience kind of quite like something like this without this side, and we had audience members sitting actually on the grass, and they were actually at the barbecue. And then we moved to big old Broadway, and we got on this huge proscenium stage and had folks like above us, so we had to kind of tweak the size of the performance. And also, there's some magic in the show for folks who haven't seen it. So the magic got bigger, got better. More exciting. We had more money, so, you know. And then from here, the show has transferred so beautifully. It's a hair smaller than what it was on Broadway, but both at the Geffen and now at the Old Globe, the set just fits so beautifully into the theater that it feels like it was kind of made for what it is right now.
It's sort of stunning here. I mean, it's like the main action of the show is right in the sweet spot of that theater. You know, it sits in there absolutely beautifully. Yeah. Who designed the magic effect? We talk about the magic effects and who designed them and how that was conceived.
Skylar Fox. Very slowly. So the magic is such a trial and error, and I've learned to appreciate magic in a way that, I mean, I didn't know about it before, but it's really something that we have to etch out each time we move into a different theater, because air quality and a lot of other things going on backstage that I don't have the brains for. But a lot of things change when we go into different spaces, and for one of our illusions in particular, we have to craft a new rigging system every time, depending on the size, the shape, the height, the wind, and the weather. Even when we were at the Geffen, I was reading reports that it started getting warmer as, you know, summer starts to approaching, and it started changing the quality of the fog, which means that we have to adjust our illusion work in the theater. So it's quite fascinating, this magic. You have to take it day by day.
Yeah. Yes, I know one of the notes that Sideeq gave early on was the theater's got to be way colder. And it was 60, what did you say, was it at the Geffen?
63.
63 degrees in the theater. All right. Yeah.
But you got to
Yes.
think about it. When all the bodies get into the theater, it makes it a little, you
Yes.
know, a little warmer. So.
Also, comedy needs you to be frigid.
Yeah.
You need to be freezing.
It's true. David Letterman has a famous line, every degree above 65 kills a laugh. Yeah. And so you want it to be really cold in there. Yeah. It's been amazing to watch these magic effects. And again, I don't want to spoil anything, but people appear and disappear and extraordinary things happen. It's quite a wild piece of stagecraft, as is the big finale of the piece, where the show really does turn into a musical. That's come up a couple of times in our conversation. And James, what do you think about that? Do you like the musical theater? Are you interested in the musical theater as a form? How did it get in there?
Oh yeah, I mean, it was my whole personality for a little while.
Really?
I love musicals, and I was a vocal performance major in college before I moved to theater. I came into the theater through musical theater. I was in Once on This Island in college. I played Ogway. Wow. Right? That's a hard song. And if I could write music, I would probably be a musical theater writer. But I don't write music.
Has anybody asked you to write the book of a musical?
Yes, I am. Can I say? I
You
can't
talk about
say.
it? You probably
I can't talk about it yet, but yeah, soon you'll be able to see a book of a musical.
That's
that I wrote.
fantastic.
Yeah.
And yeah, you can feel it in the show. So I also have had the experience, I'm doing this big Henry VI project at the moment, and two of the leads are very eminent musical theater performers. And all my life as a producer and director of Shakespeare, I have believed that musical theater performers are perfect for it, musical theater directors are perfect for it. The form, the two things have a lot in common, a lot of scene transitions, big arias, a certain kind of heightened reality, an expression that's somehow beyond the normal. And if you can do a musical, you can do Shakespeare. And if you can do Shakespeare, you can do a musical. Yeah, you find that?
I totally agree with that. I mean, it's about scale. Musicals, you have to, if it's too much to speak, you dance. If it's too much to dance, you sing. Like, that's a lot of feeling.
Yeah.
And that the only way to get it across to an audience is to put it to music and to move with it. It's very true. And I think Shakespeare, these long speeches, these massive speeches that you have to sort of follow an actor on are kind of like musical theater
Like
numbers.
songs.
Yeah.
Yeah. You occasionally have lines of Shakespeare in the show. Yeah. Talk about that. That's so surprising when that happens, when Juicy suddenly busts out a soliloquy.
I wanted to actually say, see, the way he speaks is not all that different from the Shakespeare. So that when he drops into, I have heard that guilty creature sitting at, that he's not changing to do that. It just rolls right into it.
Yeah,
and
that's actually seamless how
Yeah.
he gets in and out of the Shakespeare. Yeah.
Yeah, and I mean, to go back to that thing about the King James Bible, I think that there are a few generations of black folks in the South where it has actually had an effect on the way that they speak. They choose language differently. So that, all of that is tied into it.
Yeah. So let me stay on that theme and ask you this. I think both of you know that the American theater has undergone and continues to reckon with a kind of racial awakening that happened in the wake of the murder of George Floyd in 2020. Sideeq, you and I have talked about some of the workflow things at the Old Globe that we've adjusted in heeding calls for that. And look, it's not going to surprise anybody to know that the majority of the Globe's audience is white. And as much as we work on that at the Globe and are continuing to find more and more diversity in our audience, that's the situation. I'm going to guess that many of the theaters where Fat Ham has been produced, that's also the case. Will you just talk about how your play meeting these, what I guess the field would call a predominantly white institution, right? A PWI with a predominantly white audience, and what that experience is for you to share something so personal to you with those audiences.
Well, I hope that wherever it lands, whether it's in Boston or Atlanta or in San Diego or LA, is that it sort of functions as a lighthouse for marginalized people to say, oh, I want to show up to see that. Like, maybe I'll go to that theater for the first time because that play sounds interesting to me. Because I think, the play is an invitation to people. I think all plays are. There's just, the thing I always say is that plays are gestures towards expanding community around an idea. That's really why I write plays.
Say that again.
Plays are gestures towards expanding community around an idea.
That's fantastic. Wow.
Because we're all in this room because of a play. And we're talking about really big and complicated stuff because of a play. So I really believe that's, and I feel like the higher I go in my career, that becomes more and more important to me, that it is actually about trying to get people to think. Mm-hmm. And so I hope that it's, sort of reaching as far out to people who don't feel like they have access to these spaces to come. And then also it helps folks who come to the theater regularly become more comfortable with this kind of work.
Yeah. Well, I think both things are true here at the Old Globe. Sideeq, you want to talk about that at all? No? Okay.
James said it so well.
Yeah. No, that's incredible. I want you to write that line down for me, James, because that's an absolutely beautiful line and chimes with so much of what the Globe is doing. And indeed, it's true. It's an invitation for audiences who may look at the Globe's programming and say, I'm not sure I've found something for me now, and now I do. And, look, it is an extraordinary event for the Old Globe to put a queer black man in a queer black story made by queer black artists center stage on our biggest platform. I think that's just an important thing for an institution like this to do, and I'm deeply proud that we're able to do it, and to see people love it and embrace it and enjoy it, which is great. Are there future plans for this production, or is this where it winds up, Sideeq? Do we know?
I don't. I'm still trying to get this one up.
Oh, yeah.
I haven't even thought about it.
What's happening? Where's it at? What are you working on? What's still to do with 2 days to go before officially opening night?
Well, no, it's really in a great spot. The last layer of icing for me is just always sharpening that comedic timing, and in which we can only get that information by having audiences, right? I have to sit in the theater and experience the show with folks who are in San Diego, because it's very different from LA, it's very different from New York, and similar to what James was saying, everyone finds different things funny. So then I have to attune the cast to what this audience finds funny or may not find funny, and just prepare them so that they are comfortable with the text, the blocking, and all of the timing once I'm gone.
Yeah. And so you've got, 2 afternoons of rehearsal left before we open, right?
Yeah.
James, you'll see it tomorrow night. Yeah. Saheem's coming to town.
Yes.
And he'll get to see it. So it's going to be a real gathering and a celebration of this iteration of the show. Are there international productions planned? Do you know? Have you heard of anybody? Can you say?
I can say yes, there is.
There is, okay. So we don't know why. That's great. That's really, really exciting. And you are writing TV now, a little bit?
A bit, nothing that's on TV, but...
Right. But you're not going to leave the theater, are you?
No, never, ever.
No, please don't.
It's
that
home.
Happens all too frequently, and you can't do that.
I mean, let's talk about the elephant. It's not shabby, the money, but
yeah,
yes.
No, I get it. No, I do get it. And, I, for one, as somebody who watches TV and loves the theater, I'm curious to know what it is that you're writing that's going to entertain us and enlighten us, as your theater work has. But you've got a really, really, really specific voice in the theater, a voice that is essentially theatrical, I think, a voice that embraces what it is about the theater that is so incredibly unique. When you watch Fat Ham, this is not a movie, this is not a TV show, this is not a novel, this is not a poem, this is a beast of the theater. It is highly, highly theatrical and audaciously so. And I think that's why they give people Pulitzer Prizes, right? Because they recognize that incredibly idiosyncratic and unique voice. So please tell me you're writing more plays.
I am.
Good.
Yes.
That's what I'm incredibly happy to hear.
Yeah.
We're at the end of our time. I just want to ask one last thing of you both. So, Sideeq, how was your time in San Diego? How do you like our city?
I love it. Now that it's getting warmer, I'm here for summertime. I love it. It's really beautiful here.
You'll come back again, I do hope.
Yes.
Okay. I'm publicly inviting you to come back to the Old Globe sometime soon, because you've done an amazing, amazing job. And James, I know that you're only here for a short time and have only gotten a glimpse of our fair city, but please let me extend the welcoming invitation to you too. I want you to be part of the Old Globe's family. This show is already making an extraordinary impression. It's just an incredibly high honor to have it here. So to both of you, Sideeq, James, thank you very much for your time. Folks, thanks for coming. And enjoy Fat Ham when you get to see it.